David Allan Coe was in jail for almost 20 years before he turned 30. But jail was only the beginning. In the 1980s, he put out albums that were so shocking that they were banned by record shops and the FBI got involved. There were a lot of death threats. The radio stations wouldn't play his songs. Still, this man wrote some of the biggest hits in country music. What really took place in those years that were lost? It's possible that the truth about his underground records is more sinister than anyone thought. David Allan Coe was born in Akron, Ohio, on September 6, 1939. It was one of the worst ways for him to start his life. His father was an alcoholic who would absent for long periods of time. His mother was left to try to keep things together in a city that was already falling apart from the effects of the Great Depression. It was dirty where they lived, so they moved. All the time. David had already seen fights at home when he was only 6 years old. He would sit and listen to Johnny Ace songs to get away from the chaos going on around him. He would always feel that pain. It changed everything. David was in a lot of trouble by 1948 when he was only 9 years old. Because he stole a bike and got into fights, he was sent to the Michigan Star Commonwealth Reform School. At that age, most kids were still learning their times tables, but David was in jail, where he was taught by bigger boys how to fight, steal, and stay alive. That's where he first picked up a guitar. He began making rough songs about the things he had seen. For years that should have been school years, he was locked up in places that only made things harder for him. He would be locked up on and off for almost 20 years, until 1967. His mother married again and again when he was young. Taking care of children wasn't like it is now. His arms and back were re-scarred. David began to run away, and he would sometimes not be seen for weeks. To stay alive, he slept in empty houses and stole food, and asked for money near the factories in the city. He almost died of frostbite one winter while he was alone in a building. It wasn't just stories, this was his truth. He learned early on that no one would save him. David stopped going to school and started taking cars when he was in his early teens, around 1952 or 1953. He was caught with theft tools. He was charged with crimes based on even a simple screwdriver. Guards in Ohio's system for young people didn't try to help. They hit kids, locked them up for longer than needed, and let the strong take advantage of the weak. David began to think that the system was set up to hurt boys like him. He chose to never follow their rules again. He built his whole life around fighting back. David's early life had some very bad times that weren't just violent. In the 1950s, he said he was raped in radical schools. After that, he wrote angry and confused songs about it. But as the years went by, he started to mix fact and fantasy. He said he killed someone when he was 9 years old. It was said that he was put on death row when he was a child. It didn't all add up. There were no records of charges of murder. Things got tricky because there was real pain behind the lies. After the fact, experts said he may have used stories as a way to deal with a pain that was too big for him to face. But some people quit believing any of it because there were so many lies. It was harder for people with real stories to be heard. By the middle of the 1950s, he was in the Ohio State Reformatory in Mansfield. It was cold and dark there, and the Gothic walls and hard punishments made it famous. But that's where his music really started. To pass the time, guards gave him Hank Williams music. With a sneaked-in record player, he would listen to them alone in his cell. He learned every word and note by heart. He began writing songs at night, and the sound of his voice could be heard through the concrete walls. The pain turned into writing. His singing got better there, especially from 1954 to 1957 when he sang Penitentiary Blues. In the early 1960s, David began telling people that he had killed a prisoner who had tried to attack him. He said he was sent to death row, and that's where he met his real father. After many years, a reporter showed that none of it was true. David was in jail from 1959 to 1967 for theft, having burglary tools, and having inappropriate materials on his person. In 2000, a Rolling Stone writer talked to David and he didn't back down. He wrote a song instead that made threats against the reporter. He thought the story was more important than the truth. But something real was going on behind bars. He was taken in by black prisoners who taught him how to play the blues guitar, right? He met Screamin' Jay Hawkins inside and became very inspired by him. Most of the people in David's jail were black, but he found a type of music that spoke to their shared pain. He learned how to play the slide guitar and make every word sound moving. In the end, this would make him stand out in Nashville, but it was also hard to understand. He put out records with racist lyrics in the 1980s. A lot of people told him to stop. He said it was funny. In jail, he was called a nut lover, and now people said he was racist. He never really said what it was. He got a big Confederate flag tattoo on his back while he was in jail around 1961. It was done by another prisoner using homemade tools. That mark would stay with him through all of his work. At the same time, David fought in prisons below ground. There were more than just fights. They were planned bare-knuckle fights where prisoners bet cigarettes and safety. David broke his hand in a fight with some other people. For a while, it was hard for him to play the guitar. He used these fights as part of the story he told in his songs. David tried to live a straight life after he got out of prison in 1967. He worked as a truck driver in rough places. Roads were more important. Though, during his time out of jail in the late 1950s, he joined biker gangs. In Louisville, he rode with rough people, and in Florida, he went with other groups. The brotherhood, the bikes, and the danger in that world gave him a sense of who he was. By 1967, he was living in a hearse that was parked outside of Nashville's Ryman Auditorium and performing on the street to get attention. It worked. Shelby Singleton saw him and wrote his name on the ball. David put out Penitentiary Blues in 1969. It was a rough and dirty song that told the truth about life in prison. Some people really liked the record, but it didn't sell very well. It made people in the business talk. This man had really done everything he sang about living. He had a chance to become famous in 1970 thanks to director Billy Sherrill. David's first taste of the charts came from the song Two Lonely People, but then trouble came. The people at Columbia Records didn't like his lyrics about sex, drugs, and jail. Fights broke out while the recording was going on. David refused to give in. In 1970, he released the album Requiem for a Harlequin. It was so strange and dark that no one knew what to do with it. He had been taking a lot of LSD, especially after the death of his baby. A 3-day drug binge in a hotel room led to the writing of one song. That song sounded like a note to kill yourself. A few thousand versions of the album were sold, but now collectors pay hundreds of dollars for it. And then the rhinestones showed up. Mel Tillis gave David a bunch of fancy clothes in 1971. David wore a Lone Ranger mask and mixed them with motorbike leather. He sometimes had a mohawk and rode a Harley to gigs. That's why clubs booked him, to shock people. But after fights broke out, they often banned him. He also wrote songs for George Jones, even when Jones was drinking a lot. Also, David drank 47 beers at Tootsie's Bar in 8 hours one time. Columbia Records gave him a deal in 1973 that shocked the business. He could use his own band and decide what to do with the music. In A Field of Stone, Tanya Tucker made his song Would You Lay With Me a #1 hit. This gave him power. He made the strange and scary album Rhinestone Cowboy, which didn't have any breaks between the songs. It made him stand out as someone Nashville couldn't control and sold more than 100,000 copies. During the whole recording, he wore his Lone Ranger mask, even in the studio. When asked why, he said that his father told him to cover his face because he had a lot of warrants out for his arrest. No one knew for sure if that was true or not. Around the middle of the 1970s, David Allan Coe's life began to become famous. He put out a record called Once Upon a Rhyme in 1975. It had a country song called You Never Even Called Me By My Name that got to #8 on the Billboard lists. But it wasn't just the tune that people liked. What made it stand out was a strange speech Coe gave in the middle, in which he joked about what a great country song should have. He said it had to be about getting drunk, trains, trucks, mama, and jail. That's why his friend Steve Goodman added a line with all of that. People loved it when they did it just to bother him. Coe became famous after that one song, made fun of how samey country music had become as well. It was something everyone talked about. In 1976, Coe was at the center of a bigger story. Outlaw country was the name of a new style of country music. It was great to see Coe work with greats like Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson, Jesse Coulter, and Tom Paul Glaser on the record Wanted the Outlaws. It sold more than 1 million copies, making it the first country record to do so. That never took place before. A lot of country records only sold 300,000 copies. But Coe did more than just play music. He really looked like a bad guy. He had tattoos all over his body and had been to jail. A well-known reviewer named Ray Waddell said that Coe was the only person who looked and lived like an outlaw. In one story, Coe rode his motorcycle onto the Oklahoma Fair stage while wearing the jacket of the Outlaws Biker Club. The title of a nearby newspaper said the Outlaws came to town, and that crazy thought stuck. Coe said that moment helped give the cause its name. In the years that followed, things got even stranger. His Key West home was taken by the IRS because he owed money on his taxes. Coe didn't move into a hotel because he didn't have any money or a place to live. He went to live in a cave. There is a real cave in Dixon, Tennessee. He said he ate wild animals, wrote songs at night, and tried to start over. People believed that story, even if some parts of it were not true. It made his story stronger. He had lost everything. In 1990, he no longer had a record deal, and his split had left him with no money. He had to get help from bands like Confederate Railroad and even his son Tyler to keep going on tour. He kept going, though. Tattoo, which came out in 1977, was seen by many fans, and,